live streams. See here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so it has popped up. I'll go ahead and make our window a bit bigger. Open this popped up. Mute that. So I don't have to worry about those things. And shrink. Try and get everything all set up so that I don't have to do too much craziness. Top chat, live chat. I think that should be everything. So we'll get started just shortly. So Facebook.
It's popping up as like the last streamed. Like
Oh, I gotta change the name. Yeah, okay. I can fix that. Studio and videos.
Interview with Ben Bear.
Right.
Yay.
Right. Nice. Details. There we go. Wish you could do that all. Let's see here. The sacred texts. Resistance Reborn review. Save.
So, did you guys see the new episode of Mandalorian yesterday?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you catch all the big names in that one? Or see the big names?
Wait, which big names? You
Well, or just geek ones. No, like just his whole team that he was with.
Oh yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Bill Burr was easy to pick out. Do you know the big guy?
Yeah, he's been in all kind. The Devorian, the strong Devorian. Yeah, he's been in all sorts of stuff.
Clancy Brown, I think he was the voice of
Biff. He was Biff, right?
No, I don't think so. That was somebody else.
Maybe for some reason I always think he's Biff.
He's been a
big. I thought you were talking about the pilots at the.
There's a pilot.
Oh no, I didn't catch who the pilots were. If they were anybody.
Okay, the main pilot is Dave Filoni.
Okay, that's awesome.
So, and I think the other two were the other directors. The female was Deborah Chow, who directed episode 4. I think it was 4. And then, or maybe it was 3. Maybe she did 3. And she's doing Obi-Wan.
Okay.
And then the African-American guy, he did episode 2.
Okay.
And then the Resistance officer that they shot, that's the voice of Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars.
Oh, wow. Did you catch the voice of Zero?
No.
Yeah, he was from the IT crew.
Yeah, Moss from the IT crew.
Yeah, crowd, yeah. I actually had to look it up for a second. I thought he was from Farscape, and his name escapes me now. Crace. I thought he was Captain Crace from Farscape for a second. I think that's who it was.
Yeah.
I'm getting the social done. So if you see anybody in chat, go ahead and say hello.
Mike, the big one you might know Clancy Brown from, though, is Highlander.
So I haven't seen her.
Starship Troopers?
Starship Troopers I have, but it's been...
Yeah.
Fetching preview. Fetch the preview. That's a fun little picture there that it's showing. post. Whatever. I'll have to find a better thumbnail another time. Do we have anybody with us yet? No. 3 watching. That's probably us. We'll see what happens. Get that shared. And I'm going to post in the Star Wars Book Club section. That's that. The sacred texts. I think I actually posted that in the wrong one, but it still works. Let me just edit that post and change this. Discard. I don't think anybody's here anyway.
We're up to 4.
So one person. Well, say hello, Mike. Say hello.
Hello. Who is with us?
Type in YouTube.
And we dropped one.
That's okay. That's okay. All right. If not, we'll just record this and do it like normal and say.
That was me pulling up the YouTube tab in order to share it on Facebook.
Well, if not, we'll just do our regular chat and play like it's for real, and let people know that next time when they join us, this is what will happen. So there's that, and now I'm going to share this on Facebook. Right there it is. Share now. So I shared my timeline.
Yeah, I was watching The Mandalorian yesterday and I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, all of these are going to make great action figures.
Truth.
Like Peter was like, I want that droid for Christmas. They don't have Baby Yoda, they're not going to have that droid. I feel your pain, bud.
ShopDisney.com is starting to do some of the stuff.
Yeah, but it's all like pre-orders. The stuff they have like available now is trash.
Target had the Mandalorian Black Series figure, but apparently it's on back order because it came out early. Hold on, my dog.
They did have some of the Mandalorian Funkos, which I have. Get him.
Come on. You jerk.
So the other thing that I'm really curious about, that I was talking to one of my buddies at work who finally just binge watched to get caught up because he hadn't done it. Oh, nice. They talk about the Mandalorian way, and they've hinted that there's only allowed to be one above ground at a time, or there's only one public face at a time. That makes me wonder, was Boba it during the original trilogy, and when he died, the Mandalorian came up and took his place? But we've also know that in the new canon, they've hinted at Boba being alive. So could they possibly have a showdown later, or Boba show back up?
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't know. See, it feels like, especially with like Boba as almost like kind of like a side. Like, is he like really a part of the Mandalorian culture? You know, because I mean, even Jango Fett was always kind of operating on his own. Like, he didn't see.
Yeah. Yeah, but when Jango was active, we know from the Clone Wars, Mandalore was still its own planet, and they were still operating as their own government.
There's also the problem of not taking off the helmet, but then you have Sabine in that whole part all the time. Everyone's taking their helmets off, unless you want to say that there has been a change in the way at a certain point.
Which, I mean, you could say that. Like, I mean, you could have like, because I mean, when Sabine was coming, that was soon after. Who was it that Obi-Wan had a love fling with that was ruling Mandalore?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, she was trying to establish a peaceful, trying to get rid of the armor. Then we have that whole segment, and then like Clan Ren is kind of trying to. So I don't know. I mean, I guess I have a feeling we'll probably get some answers. Well, maybe not all of the answers.
Yeah, we'll see.
We're gonna get something on we're gonna get the Siege of Mandalore pretty soon in Clone Wars. That's the next Disney Plus thing on Star Wars coming out.
Yeah, are they just taking where the Clone Wars cartoon left off and just gonna extend it?
Yeah, I think so.
Nice.
I mean, it's Dave Filoni wrapping it up.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. It is time to start this. We are going to record this, and if anybody joins us, they join us and we'll participate. If not, we'll just talk and plug about how we hope people start joining us, but we know that we might not have a big audience right now, but we hope people get into it. So we'll see. We'll get some more content. I think that will help as well. So if you guys are ready, this will be live right now, but I'll do some editing for when we come back, and then Mike, I'll throw it over to you and let you sort of run the show after this. So are we ready? Here we go. Hello, everybody. No, you can't do that. This is how I'm starting it. Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, I was gonna like introduce it. No. You can start. No, you can start. This is the way.
No, you start. I have spoken.
Okay, that's fair. My bad. Miscommunication. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our very first episode of the Sacred Text, a Star Wars book club. So the whole point of this show is we want to get you out there in the internet and the world involved in having a review of a book. So many times we've listened to podcasts or we've seen shows and videos and just people are talking at us. And so Mike, Blaine, and I thought it would be a fantastic idea to have a show that could interact and encourage interaction with people to all talk about the genre and the books that we love so much. So this is our first episode. We may not have a lot of people joining us today, and that's fine. We're going to point out some of the opportunities where people can't interact with us. This will still be posted on the YouTube channel, and you can figure out what's going on. But it's going to be fun. So please share. Please join us. Give us feedback. More content will be coming soon because this is our part to ramp up to the new movie coming out in just a few days. So I hope you enjoy the show, and thanks so much for watching.
All right, so yeah, let's get started. The book we selected this month was Resistance Reborn by Rebecca Roanhorse. Thought it was a pretty good book, but I kind of wanted to start off with everybody's general thoughts, and maybe one disclaimer if you're watching this on YouTube live and maybe haven't read the book yet. We are going to do a spoiler chat, so if you don't want to be spoiled, come back and read the book and come back later. But if you don't care about spoilers, come plunge ahead with us and you'll learn about the book. So, Blaine, what did you think of the book?
You want to take a second to introduce everybody?
Oh, yeah. All right, so the guy with the beard and the Mandalorian cap, that is Blaine Riffle. And the guy with the beard with no Mandalorian cap is Reed Connolly. And then I am Michael Denton. I have no Star Wars gear on at the moment, which is very, very sad. But I do have Star Wars stuff behind me.
I have a shirt. Yeah, we all do a soccer podcast, so this is why we all know each other and why sometimes we might have thought that other people might know us. But of course, in the Star Wars realm, we do some fun podcasts with our soccer chat, our soccer blog around May the 4th every year. But this is a new venue for us, a new passion.
Yeah, we figured since we talk in Star Wars books and stuff after the podcast, we might as well make our own show and record it and put it out there so other people can join us.
Yeah.
All right, so Blaine, what'd you think about the book? You were the one who read it last. So.
That's right.
Yeah, I actually finished it yesterday, which is going to be a great place to start with. I really had trouble getting into this book to begin with. It was not the easiest one for me to pick up and just get sucked in. And while I was reading it, I was captivated by most of what was going on, and I wanted to see where the story arcs went. But anytime I put it down to go do whatever else I had to do with my life, I always found it hard to come back to this one. Like, this one didn't just grab me and keep me sucked in like some of the other ones until about the last quarter of the book, and then I just wanted to see how they were going to end it heading into the new movie. If you didn't know or if you couldn't tell, this book does kind of lead right up to where I think the text crawl at the start of the next movie is going to be, which is kind of cool. It fills in some gaps. It answered a few questions for me I had after The Last Jedi, kind of put some things into perspective. But yeah, it was a harder one to get into. I did enjoy it for the most part. It didn't seem to grip me like I would normally with a book.
What about you, Reed?
I had a little bit of a completely different response to that than Blaine. I I enjoyed it at the beginning. Sometimes I find these books with the multiple stories going on at the same time, jumping back and forth every chapter, every other chapter, can be a little confusing, and that those stories don't always converge very well. But I really enjoyed the pacing with this book, with the story going on at Corellia, with the new First Order bookkeeping group, and having that paralleled with what was happening with the fledgling surviving resistance. I thought those characters were really engaging, and that for me helped keep it going, because sometimes that secondary story doesn't always interest me as much. But this time, like, I wanted to know what was going to happen. I wanted to know what these First Order officers were going to be doing there. So for me, that kept it going really well. And I also really enjoyed how some of these characters like Finn and Poe, how we've seen them in the movies, and we sort of have a baseline for how they might respond to something, or how they are going to talk, and maybe the pacing of their speech. And I thought that was reflected very well, and I kept my interest, because I wanted to keep moving on and see more of that, to see that continue. And so I really felt like these were good representations of the people, and particularly for Poe, a view of him, a much more view of him, which I don't think we've gotten a lot of him on screen in much depth.
Yeah, we definitely got a lot of Poe in this one. I mean, really, out of the three of the trio, this was a Poe-centric book.
Centric.
We get a little bit of Rey and what she's thinking through her conversation with Leia. A little bit of Finn. I actually didn't like the depiction of Finn in this book, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. My general thoughts overall was, I mean, I did enjoy it. I kind of read it the first day I got it. Just happened to have time that day and just read it all through the night. Until I went to bed and finished it. So I was thinking I was going to get a chance to reread it before we did this, but that did not happen because life intervened. But it was still, it was good. I didn't feel like it met the promise of the book in terms of, this is the book that you really need to have read before Rise of Skywalker. This is going to lead you up to the last crawl. I didn't feel like we got that. I feel like we got a little bit of information. But, I mean, I feel like this kind of sort of sets up Finn and Poe and Rey to go do a whole bunch of adventures that we're not going to see before Rise of Skywalker. So, I was kind of expecting a lot more. I kind of actually got more details as far as, like, okay, this is where the Resistance is, from Black Spire Outpost, which is the book that Disney kind of released to give the backstory for Galaxy's Edge. I actually kind of liked that one a little bit more. I hope it was a little bit more detailed. That was kind of like my one big disappointment. Now, one of the big pluses for me, so much callbacks to other canon.
Yes.
If you love Star Wars, comics, anything, there was something in it for you. Like, I I was shocked that we had a main character as Shriv and Zay from Battlefront 2. I really enjoyed them getting a lot of the limelight. Then we had Nora from Aftermath. We had, the Black Squadron from the comic books. I think if any of you have watched Star Wars Explain, where Alex Dane kind of goes through Easter eggs and connections, I think it's like a 20-minute video from, like, okay, well, this character is in this book previously, and there's so many callbacks. So that was really good. It was really good to kind of see all these characters kind of come together, and get their time in the limelight. So obviously, I think that with the multiple storylines that Reed mentioned, there's a lot of kind of themes that are going on. What were some of the themes that really spoke to you? Reed, you mentioned really liking the First Order recording office.
Yeah, I did. And also one thing I want to add, talking about characters, I know that maybe a lot of us, myself, maybe more so than many, have been just stoked to see what's happened to Wedge. And to see Wedge in this book was both exhilarating for me and also terrifying, because I didn't want him to die. And that was my first, like, the first thing I was like, yes, Wedge is here. I hope they don't kill him. So that was the thing. No, with Winsher over in the First Order side, I just loved how they made a character which at first glance seemed so minor, was able to rise up to be a very important plot element, but just that development of this character in so few chapters that they had to get his background, to understand the drive that he had. And I think we all know his feeling of being overlooked and overvalue, and where his place is within a hierarchy, to some extent, like a faceless hierarchy. I think if we don't relate to that, we can relate to we know someone who may have that opinion of themselves. Is that a bad thing to say? I'm going to say it anyway. But it felt very real. I mean, you could think of a guy or a gal or anybody, just, you could think of a coworker who is just, well, I'm the most important person here, and I'm the one who makes it click, when in reality, many of us are just cogs. And that came through so well for me reading him, and everything that he did after that fit with the way he treated his subordinates, and his view of just the outward appearance of one character. Like, well, she I've lost her name right now. Yama, yeah, with just her look, she does not fit this mold. She is not good, and everything worked really well for me. So I found myself early on in the book really looking forward for those chapters to see what was going to happen with that story next. Because I can see what you're saying, Blaine, how some of the buildup was a little slow, but I did enjoy having Maz come in and doing some of that. But that was, for me, an early driving point, just to see some of this behind-the-scenes First Order and probably even Imperial bureaucracy that we didn't really get a good view at before.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. Wincher's character arc was probably my favorite, and I don't think I ever put the book down when I saw a chapter was starting with his story.
Yeah.
But it's like when I finished his, I'd put it down, and then I couldn't get back into the rest of the Resistance story. I agree. I mean, that was one of the highlights of the book for me. I think it really played a good contrast to Poe's role in the thing. The book seemed to kind of focus around different leadership styles and different ways of handling authority. Big spoiler in this one. I really think this is going to be a crucial book to read if you want to see how Poe goes from where we got him at the end of The Last Jedi to what we're going to expect to see, what I expect to see from him in Rise of Skywalker. He's not just the hotshot pilot that we've seen who made a mistake and got the Resistance decimated. He's transitioned into a leader through this book. Commander at this point, I think, is his official title. Like, he's really stepped up through this book. And so I think this book helps transition that for the next movie. But we see that counterplayed against the three different story arcs of the Resistance, and Wincher, and I'm going to blank on the Genial.
Genial's the First Order officer above him.
Yeah.
Like, we see throughout this book, we see 5 or 6 different critical leaders have some pretty good story arcs. I mean, we go to the Yendor on Ryloth. You're seeing all these different types of leadership styles, and the book really pushed this hard from what I was seeing, and it kind of played off of each other. Wincher and how he treats his 2 subordinates, and then Genial and how he treats his subordinates, and how he sees things differently than Wincher, and the 3 different leaders there at that final plot line when they've got 3 separate missions going. We see something different from everything, and we got a lot of character development by contrasting others. I think you get a really good view of who Poe is right now and headed into the new movie, because we saw all these other people, especially Wedge, who is his academy trainer as a pilot, and you see how he's so much different than Wedge is when they're both running their own missions. But because we all know Wedge, a lot of people love Wedge. Wedge has always been one of those good leader characters who never really wanted to be a leader. And so I really think the book nailed that down really well and gave us something good to build on headed into the new movie.
I really like that point about leadership, because I think that's actually one of the first scenes we get is after the Resistance is looking, then they kind of quickly cut to Poe after his victory in, I think, Grail City. I don't remember what the planet is. That's the planet.
Yeah.
The story there is they save the city. City asks them to help, and they'll support the Resistance. Then after City saved, they're like, well, we'll just kind of... and that really gets into I mean, we see that leadership issue on Ryloth, and whether or not the leadership of these planets are going to have the courage in order to step up against the First Order. And that's kind of been a lot of the theme of the sequel canon, are all these other planets and communities simply not wanting to step up to risk themselves or do anything of the First Order, either because they ignore the threat or they're not willing to risk it. That's been one of the better things about the sequel canon, where it's filled in, is like, why is the First Order risen and why is no one's up? It's because no one has the courage to do it.
Is there any question for you guys, though, talking about that rise? Is there anything that seems too quick? Like, I know it's the remnants of... Okay, you're getting to that.
Yeah, the one thing I wouldn't say, and I had kind of in my general dislikes, so the rise of it, I don't have a problem with it. I did feel like, and especially with the attack on Rylaw, I feel like the First Order is a little too strong right now. Like, I don't have a problem with, like, okay, it sat in, for 30 years and it could do whatever, fine. But it felt like after Snoke's ship was blown up and they lost however many Star Destroyers due to the Holdo maneuver, they should be, like, in some way incapacitated. And that was something, like, I liked a little bit more about Black Spire Outpost, where they're like, we could just send, like, a transport. And it's not until I think later that they're like, okay, we actually need to send reinforcements here. There's a serious problem. But, like, in here, it's just like, oh, we have a report, huge wave here. There's a huge wave at the party where the auction is. Is that on Corellia too? Yeah, that's on Corellia too. But it seems like the First Order is everywhere. It's a little too big for me here. Whereas I would have liked to see them, like, licking their wounds a little bit after losing Starkiller Base, losing a Dreadnought, losing Snoke's ship, losing Snoke, and then all the losses they took. I mean, I know the Resistance is pretty bad off, but the Resistance was never well off to start with.
Yeah, no, that's... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm still curious who's running the First Order. Is it Kylo running solo, or does somebody else have charge of the First Order? And I don't know the answer to that. I think we're going to get some of that here in the movie in a few days.
Palpatine.
Yeah, if it's Kylo doing this kind of arc makes sense. Having the First Order go crazy on him right now, and just kind of run this way. But they just lost a Dreadnought. They just lost Snoke. Maybe this is compensating. Maybe they're trying to put on a brave face, a strong face, and not show the weakness. I mean, we would expect them to be doing that, but the first thing you want to do if you take these type of losses is you want to assert dominance and you want to flex over these other cities. Corellia has never been a problem, but Ryloth, the whole history of Ryloth, and they hint at it a little bit in this book, has been one of this. It wouldn't surprise me, and then if they were going after Ryloth to shut down a potential resistance ally there. Ryloth's never going to give in to the First Order, but they showed up and tried to flex, and they got some of the government to cave. It almost makes sense that they're overcompensating right now to kind of help cover their wounds instead of just kind of bunkering down and giving the resistance a chance to rebuild. They know how close it is to being over. They have to keep moving, and they have to make sure any allies go. And that was a huge part of this book, too, with the whole First Order storyline. The list of subversives and the list of detainees, they really were worried about that getting out, and they were really trying to find and remove any potential allies for the resistance and anybody who Leia and her team could go after to really support them. So I don't really have a problem with the First Order kind of being a little more aggressive and a little more everywhere right now. They seem to be very proactive because they know how weak they are.
That's fair, and I guess it does make sense too, knowing that the entire most of the Republic fleet was dismantled and gotten rid of, and was mostly, I guess it's just some sort of defense force at this time, just scaled, that the military were scaled back so much that it would be easier to mount some sort of resistance. But I mean, there had to be something. I mean, we know that there was some sort of a military presence, but and that I haven't gotten to see what happened to that. Like, could Leia not have drawn from that to some extent. Did it get destroyed so quickly? But you're right with what they had versus what the New Republic was at that time. It does make sense for them to be somewhat maybe on the upper end, and they can hit that aggressive point really really hard and go. But still, like, I feel like it just felt a little bit too well established. Like, we can put this big pressure on Corellia. We've got this for Ryloth. We're able to go out through the entire galaxy and track down and hunt down and kill or capture or imprison. Right, all the way out into, like, in the fringes of known space, that you can go out there and they still have that ability, which is fine. I mean, like, it was the entirety of the Empire Remnant, and we don't have in New Canon versus Legends, we don't have this huge period of warlords where everything was fractured. So much of it was pulled back together and hidden into wherever the new Empire is now, to maybe have built up there. Maybe that's what I just need to accept and go for it. But it feels a little bit too much, but I'm okay with that, because there's still some cool things going on and some cool development going on in this book that I definitely appreciated.
Yeah, there definitely was. One of the things I really liked, and we talked about brats. I really liked kind of that depiction of the banality of evil. Just how he just thinks, like, I'm just doing my job. He's just kind of doing a career guy, but there's always that, like, lurking violence within him that ends up popping out towards the end at Yama and ends up causing him his doom. I gotta find the quote that I really liked right after he died. But one of the things I think it's probably important to talk about as far as general themes is the theme of rebirth in general. Obviously, the book is called Resistance Reborn. And I feel like, even when I was kind of flipping through today, a lot of this book is about all the people in the Resistance being reborn after the trauma. Even Brat, I think, is trying to attempt a rebirth of sorts. Because he comes from this place where he's overlooked. They talk a lot about his religious training with some sort of temple, which I'd love to hear a lot more about that and what exactly religion that is, if it's connected to the Force or whatnot. But anyway, he has this religious upbringing that he's now rejected for whatever reason. I guess maybe there was someone abusive, and now he's trying to be reborn into the First Order and really accept its values fully. But then, he's a weakling, and then he has to kill Genial, and he's trying to be reborn into this, like, overlord, pure First Order man. Then it's Poe dealing with the fallout from his mutiny and the decision to end up inadvertently leaking Holdo's plan to the First Order. Rey's kind of trying to figure out who she's going to be now. And I wish we had gotten so much more of Rey. I'm like, why didn't we just stick her on Ryloth?
The movie.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
Can't we just, like, send her to Sabi's at Galaxy's Edge, get her lightsaber, have her just, like, kick some stormtroopers around?
Want to say hello to Nathan real quick, though, who's just joined us in the chat and is super excited for December 20th. So, hey, Nathan.
Hey.
Hi.
Yeah, I mean, Shriv and Zay kind of have, like, Zay particularly dealing after the loss of her mother, who was killed, I guess, about a week ago. When the events of this book happen. But yeah, that's kind of all over everyone. Everyone's kind of dealing with trauma, processing it, and I thought that really tied in well with The Last Jedi, where it's talking about failure is the greatest teacher. You have to use that failure in order to grow. And so I thought it was really neat how we got to see a lot of those characters really have the time to reflect on that failure and grow from it.
That's really cool to think about that, because this is part of the journey to the Rise of Skywalker. So to have rebirth be that key element is a great part. It's a great thing to point out, because you're exactly right, and I didn't take it that far to Winshire to have that be his rebirth moment. It's almost just because, like, it fails ultimately for him, like he just gets that bit. But it also makes me think of, as you're saying that's a big theme in Aftermath as well, with what we've already seen for the First Order from the Empire, of this rebirth through hardship, just as honing out and pounding out of the impurities like you would with metal to get what's pure and what's left, which is pretty authoritarian and awful for their case. And we're going for the opposite side here, but yeah, no, that's awesome to start thinking about it some there. But I wanted to add, you mentioned, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and it's really interesting if you take that approach to failure and contrast it with the resistances. The idea of like the Empire and Kylo's is let the past die, kill it if you have to. Is that if there's an impurity, you destroy it, and you get rid of it. And that's actually kind of what Luke is feeling at the beginning of Last Jedi. And then as he talks to Yoda, no, the failures, you've got to have the impurity as part of it. And that sets up a really interesting philosophical clash between the two rival entities.
Right, and they're so dependent upon the past with the Resistance. I mean, they're going back. They're bringing in Riken from Hoth to come in to be a leader again and a general, and trying to rely and all that. The one thing I will add that you mentioned, because you mentioned Poe, I felt that he was almost a little bit too mopey at times during this book. I mean, we've seen so little of him. I'll throw that in there. I have no problem thinking of him as that mutiny and failure and seeing all those ships destroyed as they were trying to escape. I have no problem with that being an impactful moment to him, but it seemed just like he was too mopey. Like I said, that he was too down on himself, too down on everything, and had this huge chip and just loss of faith in himself that I guess it's not completely unbelievable, but to some extent I just was a little bit surprised that some of his bravado or some of his charisma didn't counter that. But maybe that was just me.
No, I felt that sometimes too.
See, I didn't.
You didn't?
No. A guy that riding that high like he had been, and the hotshot pilot, to take a loss like that and to mutiny for the wrong reasons and not understand, to see him come crashing down that hard just makes sense for that type of character. The higher you fly, the farther you have to fall. So I just kind of, I didn't mind it so much.
I think it maybe would have been a little bit better if it wasn't as focused on his mutiny, and kind of was like a general sense of despair. Because I mean, Poe has been in the Resistance for a while, and to have all of this, I think for that to have been weighing on him too, be like, man, we lost our base, we've lost all these people, we lost Hosni and Prime, we lost all this stuff, and like, man, we've lost so much. Are we going to do this? And a lot of it might be my fault. I felt like if it had been situated a little bit more in the broader picture of the despair of the Resistance, but it felt like all of the parts of despair for the Resistance were reserved for Leia. And I felt like if there had been a little bit more interchange, especially in this next movie, because I mean, I know we're going to have Leia in it, but I mean, I think realistically, Poe's going to have to be the leader of the Resistance, unless maybe Lando's taking over. I'm not sure, but it feels like the setup is, especially at the end of The Last Jedi, Poe is taking over. It's Poe's, Poe and Leia, and then sometime in Rise of Skywalker, it'll become Poe. So I just would kind of like to see more of the general picture impacting Poe than just him so focused on his failure.
That's fair. Oh yeah.
Now, see, I think they countered that with Leia pretty well. I know we had some comments outside of the book. She's been the senator, she's had all this, and she's failed so often. I don't mind this so much because Leia, through her urging him to become the leader, has kind of worked him through that. She's kind of groomed him to be that next person. I don't know. I feel like this book did him justice and did the whole storyline justice, especially right before they all went on their 3 missions and he had to talk with all these different people about his failures and everything, and just how everybody around him lifted him up. It's been, Leia's always shouldered that weight, and she's trained Poe how to shoulder that weight, because not all of Leia's decisions have been stellar throughout the series. I know we talked about it. The New Republic, we know very little about it. They didn't give us much about the New Republic, and when we showed up in the Force Awakens, New Republic was gone halfway through. I mean, we went 30 years in the future and got little to no information on the New Republic, and then it's just destroyed. and I know I mentioned it to you guys in chat, and I'll say it here. Leia failed in the rebuild. I mean, that's huge, and I felt like that really undercut her character a lot. Because, and I mean, we go back to the Legends canon. The New Republic was a big entity. It survived for quite a while. It was what they were defending against remnants of the Empire coming through in these different warlords. Here, the New Republic never really did much, and the First Order rose alongside it, and it may have taken a little bit, but it came up, and then they just destroyed them pretty quick. Like, we don't have a New Republic, we don't have stable government, and I have to wonder how Leia's handled all of that for so long, and she's transferred a lot of that onto Poe here, and gotten him ready to take over.
So I'm trying to sort through when I say in my head about that. So I've I don't know. Give me a second. Go ahead. I'm thinking through something.
I was going to say, I do think the politics of the New Republic, I think, is a big talking point about the sequel trilogy in general, whether or not that's been the correct situation or not. I mean, I will say, as far as the canon goes, our really only great look at the New Republic and how it functioned was in Leia Bloodlines. That's pretty much about it. You see a little bit in Aftermath, but I mean, all we kind of know is under Mon Mothma led a policy of demilitarization, which Leia opposed, but she lost that fight. And then you can kind of get this idea, like, they were fine in the core worlds, but they weren't really reaching out to the outer rim, especially at least where the First Order is operating, because they seem to not be aware of anything until Leia starts to get sniffs of it in Bloodline, which is when she starts to found the Resistance. And then I lost my train of thought.
Okay, well, I can pick up then, because I got mine back.
Go.
So I was going to say, I think that's a little harsh, Blaine, to say that Leia failed, because I think Bloodlines is a book which segues into another character I was really glad to see in this book. I think Bloodlines is a book that shows maybe some loss of political power that Leia had, but that complete turnaround and betrayal by Ransom Castrofo that she is Vader's daughter completely undercuts any authority and the majority of goodwill and ability she has to do anything politically to help the Republic from whatever path it's going. So I don't think she so much has failed as it was undercut, and she never had the ability to try to do what she wanted to do. And so I'm really stoked, though, to see Ransom back in the series now being rescued. I think of him kind of like a Borsk Fela character in a lot of ways of some of the arrogance that he has, but a potential leader. And so I would love if he was in the Rise of Skywalker movie as well, to sort of show the next chapter. So, but I feel like it's a little harsh.
Yeah, well, Ransom was a great character. For those of you who didn't read Blood, Ransom was a character who was Leia's opposition in Bloodline. I don't remember the exact issue that they were opposing, but one of the characteristics he had was artifacts, and he collected a whole bunch of them. And there was like at some point, but he wasn't like a huge fan of the Empire. He just thought they were cool. And then at some point during the book, he's like, "Wait a minute, there's the people who like the Empire and want it to come back and like love the fascism aspect and the control and all of that." So that was kind of interesting to see in Bloodline. So if you haven't read Bloodline, go ahead and check it out. But yeah, it ends with basically a First Order plot succeeding to make sure Leia is deposed from power and discredited. And of course, Leia is the person who kind of realizes there's something going on in the Outer Rim, and we need to be militarily prepared for it. And the Republic doesn't want to listen to her. Mon Mothma's long history of demilitarization is not something anyone wants to reverse, and so Leia's kind of on her own trying to cobble together the Resistance.
You had mentioned what our favorite characters were, and there were just so many minor characters in this book that I loved, and not always unhappy with what happened to them. Like Winshire, I thought was definitely fitting with what happened to him, but the character that made me upset with a death was Stronghammer. When he died, like, I understand how it makes sense with his personality and what he was, and he has no backstory. He has not a huge impact, but there was so much of me, like, I loved that whole little scene, going to the junk planet, having to sort of just zip line across docking platforms and destruction platforms. Like, that could have been, if not a movie itself, a section of a movie. Like, I would have loved that so much more than anything that happened on Canto Bright. Like, anything that was awesome. The sort of Ocean's 11, go in there, rescue the ships. No, Gone in 60 Seconds. That's what I'm thinking of. The Gone in 60 Seconds version of going in and getting X-Wings and getting out of there. Like, I wanted him to go in there and find a U-Wing and break out and be like, buddy, let's do this. And then when we start The Rise of Skywalker, Poe is just crew cut and it's gone and no flowing logs because Stronghammer has beaten him in whatever way. So I got attached to him so quickly and just enjoyed it so much that I was really bummed to see him go. But I like how he did go in that, like, hail of blaster fire and fury and that. But I really enjoyed that little bit as well with Shiv going there into the planet and busting out with all that equipment.
Oh yeah, and that planet it's not in a movie, but it's in a video game. It's in Fallen Order. That's where we first meet the Jedi there, Cal Kestis.
So I have not played.
You don't get to save a bunch of X-Wings, but you do get to do some really cool stuff. I don't know if you zip. I don't think you zip line.
Oh, that's lame. That's lame. You should. You totally should. I like that.
Game, though, so
I like that. I like that.
I won't spoil that. First of all, welcome, Mark. Mark DuPont just joined us. So welcome.
Hey.
I know he read the book. He and I DM'd a little bit like the week after. So yeah, we've been kind of going over some themes. But you just mentioned your favorite character. I think we all kind of liked Winshire Brad as a character. Blaine, what other characters did you really like?
The Imperial officer.
Is it Monty?
No. Teza. Tez.
Oh, okay.
The ex-Imperial officer. Just an interesting character to bring into the Resistance. One that I really do hope gets in the movie and gets to take a more focal role for the new movie. She brings a lot to the team and just a lot of knowledge. And her relationship with Yama at the end could be really fun to see play out in the movie. You've got two insiders, one who knows the old Imperial ways, and one who was a record keeper for the First Order with an eidetic memory. Like that brings a lot to the table that could be thrown into the movie. And I really hope these two characters as a pair aren't just kind of tossed aside or waved off in the text crawl at the beginning of the movie. I really want to see these two come up in the movie because they were well written characters, they were believable, but we didn't get enough of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much I want to see in the new movie, but I'm like, wait a minute, they don't have they're not gonna have time to fit all these characters. One of my favorite characters was kind of similar to that. I really like Yama, meeting her. Obviously, I love Shriv. I've loved Shriv since I saw him in Battlefront 2. I think he's hysterical. You know, if you just say we're gonna make a movie about Shriv, I'm in. You know, if you haven't played Battlefront 2 and aren't intending to, first of all, it's a great game. It's pretty cheap now. But if you don't want to, go ahead and find the cutscenes for the story, and just Shriv's lines are hilarious. But I love Shriv, but I really like, as far as new characters, Yama in this one. I think just like a 15-year-old girl kind of like making her way in the First Order, being, you know, kind of not having it all together, but like really being smart. Not letting. I think she was really into character, and I agree with you, Blaine. I definitely, even if we don't get to see her more in Rise of Skywalker, I definitely want to see her more in canon. I can see her playing a big role in, because I'm sure what's going to happen is after the movie we're going to get stories of how long is it between The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker? They said yet?
I haven't heard.
I'm sure what's going to happen is that it's going to be a period of time, and we're going to have, all right, here are all the adventures that Rey, Finn, and Poe went on in these times, and I hope we get to see more of that, and Yama plays a big role in that. Characters from the movies that we haven't talked about yet is Rose. Didn't see a whole lot of her in this one. She kind of hung out with Rey and Leia, and was just kind of like working in the background with Chewie. Um, we haven't seen a whole lot of Rose in the marketing and stuff, so are we thinking that we're dialing back Rose the way that the prequels kind of dialed back Jar Jar after one? Are we seeing a lot of Rose in Rise of Skywalker or not?
I think she's gonna play kind of a key role. I don't know that it'll be a big role, but I think she's gonna do something fairly pivotal in the movie. And honestly, we didn't see a ton of Finn in this book either. Finn always kind of played the sidekick role. We didn't see a lot of Finn development. He was just there. Mm-hmm. And so I really think we know kind of where Poe's headed. This book was very focused on Poe. I think that's why we didn't see Rey either. Like it's those three characters are going to do something big in this movie, and I don't I don't know if what's going on or if it's going to be good or bad for them, but it's kind of Rey's story. Um, I don't know. They put that relationship with Rose and Finn in there. The book kind of shot it down a little bit, but I don't know. I get the idea that the creative team behind the movie put some parameters out there for this book and said you can't touch this and you can't do too much with these characters. And I think we didn't see enough of those three, so I have a feeling those three are going to have something big to do in the new movie. And so that's why we didn't see much of them. And I'm kind of okay with that. That's kind of one of the problems with reading some of this in between the movies canon before the movies have come out. Mm-hmm. Because you can go back through them between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. You can do whatever you want to with those characters because you know what happens. Or Rogue One's a prime example. You can throw a whole bunch of characters into Rogue One, but none of them show up in the original trilogy. So you're free to do what you want with those characters, but they're probably not going to make it, type of deal. So this is one of the opposites of that. You had some characters you can't do much with them because the movies take precedence, and that's where they're headed.
So I have not seen all the trailers. I make it a point to only watch the first trailer for any of the Star Wars movies, any movie in general, pretty much, because I want to minimize spoilers. So I don't know what's been said. I know I've seen articles pop up online when I'm trying to not jump into clickbait, where people have been wondering how big Rose will play a part in to the new movie. So without any of that stuff being known by me, because I try to keep myself dumb on purpose for a lot of this, I don't know if it'll be a huge part. I am definitely not one of those people who were mad that she was in the series to begin with. I'm glad she was in the book. I think it makes sense the way she was used in the book, and I think she's a fine character for what she has. I never have had any ill feelings towards her. She seems very supportive, away from the main, in some ways kind of like a Wedge was or a Biggs was in the older movies, where it's like, here's someone, they came in, they had a role, they did it, and that's kind of it. You don't get much. I don't know where they're gonna go. Finn establishes in this book like there's nothing there, like we're just friends. So there's not this romance thing that I think some people have talked about in the past. Doesn't mean that he's not lying or it can't change in a movie, but it sort of downplays some of that. So I don't know if she plays a part, that's cool. If she doesn't play a part, that's cool. I'm kind of indifferent to what happens, but I at no point felt that her character was out of place or used poorly in Resistance Reborn.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably just one of those, like, well, we didn't see a whole lot of her. Right, we didn't really miss her because, I mean, most of what she's supposed to be is she's a mechanic. She's not a fighter. She doesn't, they kind of threw her in one of those speeders just because they needed bodies.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
At TLJ. But
Battle of Hoth 2.
Something to kind of mention as far as, like, looking at what we're going to see. So we just haven't seen a whole lot of what Rose is going to in this movie. Even if you have watched all the trailers, I'm sure there was one today that I haven't seen. Regardless, I mean, we know the focus of the movie is going to be on Ray and Kylo, regardless.
So Mark mentioned that Wedge was his favorite character, along with some of the Twi'leks that had the old Rebel connections. So a question I have for you guys is, and I asked Mark, but he's bounced back and forth to me on the chat. He can't be as into the chat. And if anybody joins us in the future, this is what we want to do. These same questions that we're talking about, we want to hear your feedback so that we can talk about it and get responses and go back and forth. This is, I think, a much more fun and interactive format than just listening to us talk all the time. So we want you to be a part of it. And Mark says that he has Wedge, and I agree. Do you guys think his character was done well, portrayed well? There's a lot of me that wants to try to separate what I know from Wedge in Legends versus what we know of Wedge now, which involves a lot of Star Wars Rebels for the backstory, and then just the movies, and then this. Like, I so wish that we had Rogue Squadron in here to have all of that great material that Wedge was a part of, but we've seen very little of Ace Pilot Wedge. So does his character for you guys now live up to what you hoped it would be, or what it accurately has been displayed through Aftermath and the movies?
I haven't read all of Aftermath, so I can't speak on what they did with Wedge in the new canon, but I really felt like this portrayal of Wedge did the character justice. I've always viewed Wedge as kind of one of those selfless guys that's always been there to fight. But in this one, we start out with him being retired and kind of settled down with Nora. And I don't mind that take for a prominent character that fans have loved. It doesn't do any disservice to his previous record. It doesn't do anything to what's now Legends. It doesn't debunk any of that. It doesn't throw any of that out. He could still be that ace pilot we've all loved from Legends. It's just he's at a different stage of his life. And so it's a great starting point. And what they did with him in this book fit the character that I know Wedge to be. And so I'm not upset with the portrayal. I don't think they did anything wrong. I think they did him justice. And the only thing that I'm less sad about for this is he's not going to be in the movie. I was hoping that this was a tease for Wedge coming back and doing the new movie, because I would love to see him back on the screen one more time.
Just don't kill him like Akbar. I liked it. I think it was good. To answer my own question, I liked the unease that he still felt being grounded, and how he was just ready to go and pack his bag and is ready to jump back to the seat again, and how sort of his real retirement ideal plan is like to be in the stars, to like have a freighter cruising around doing whatever. Like that's him. He is space through and through. And there was part of me that really wanted him to jump in a cockpit and do something and have people be just super impressed that he still had it. But I'm okay with Wedge, and people. I still think he had that acknowledgement for how good he was with being the flight instructor in Poe and Snap and all those people. How much they respected his skill, I think, was there. I have just always loved Star Wars characters that were elite based on their skill and ability alone, and not the need of the Force. So those characters have just always seemed so much cooler to me, because you know that they are just that good, and they don't have to have the Force to help supplement anything that goes along with them. So not losing any of that with Wedge is good. But I agree with you, Mike. I do wish that we would see him in the movie, but I know the actor is not keen on it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I did like about Wedge's portrayal is that when we look at a lot of the other leaders from the rebellion, it's not a happy story. You know, Leia,
True, yeah.
Han, Luke, all of that. So it was kind of nice to see one of them like, yeah, I succeeded, and now I'm living life on a farm,
raising some chickens.
Raising some chickens. You know, the neighbors are kind of annoying, but you have like these you know, so it's kind of nice to like have that because we don't have a whole lot of like, oh yeah, it's just like hanging out, you know, on the farm doing raising chickens. You know, it's kind of like nice to see that because we don't see that most of the time. It's like, well, your occupations in Star Wars are, you know, you're either in a desert or you're a bounty hunter or a smuggler or you're fighting a war. So it's kind of nice to see like one of the people from the original rebellion. I'm just, you know, hanging out with my wife and just having a good old time, living a normal life retirement. But I also really like the fact that like he packed his bag, and then Nora packed her bag, but they didn't. They always assumed that the other one wouldn't have packed their bags. Like, okay, are we gonna give him like a night's sleep to get through this? I sort of like that aspect of the relationship. The relationship between them worked a lot more for me in this book than it did in Aftermath. It was just kind of like a tack on thing at the end. I have to go back to see how much it really. But I remember not coming away from Aftermath like, oh, Wedge and Nora, like this is a great relationship. But it really worked for me here.
I wish from that scene of coming to get Wedge and Nora, that whole little bit there on Akiva, I wish there was a little bit more of the persuasion to get Nora to go, because it sounded like there was a conversation that happened when Wedge and Snap were left alone and everybody else went to the city and the girls went to the city. I feel like I would have liked to at least kind of maybe bounce back and forth between Snap talking to Wedge and getting Nora convinced, maybe a little bit, but in general, I was just happy to get Wedge involved. Mm-hmm. Mark has chimed in about Rose and says that he felt that she was unused in favor of some of the EU characters, and he wasn't always familiar with those. And he felt like it was supposed to that he was supposed to recognize some of the characters, and that he didn't really. And he thinks he would have had a lot more fun if he had read some of the other ones. I guess, do you think this book, because it had so much of that callback, is that diminished? Is the interest in this book diminished for people who don't have all those connections?
I think so. I mean, there's a lot of things that like you don't get. Like, I mean, for me, one of the next questions I had on my list of like things to talk about is the list of like your favorite moments. And there's at least the moment that's my favorite moment is my favorite moment because I've played Battlefront 2, and so I get the initial callback and get the real meaning. So, and I think that's going to be something that Star Wars is going to have to struggle with. Mm-hmm. You know, as you grow the canon, how dependent is the next canon book going to be on the book? You know, I mean, that's a problem movies have. I mean, pretty much every franchise that has like these extra things has to struggle with. I mean, I know with Marvel, it was like, okay, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's dependent. Actually, no, we don't want you to have to watch a TV show before you watch a movie because we make a lot of money from it. So we'll put in like maybe some subtle inferences in the TV shows that you can then read into the movie. I mean, Star Wars, the main example of canon books crossing into the movies is the compass that was on Luke's hut in The Last Jedi, plays a role in Battlefront 2. And I think it should still play a role because it's never been really explained what that is. Regardless, I think there's always this tension between you want to, in order to sell the book, you've got to have to say, this is something you need to have paid attention in order to see the next movie. But then you don't want people to have have read the books in order to see the movie, because most people don't know. And then in the books themselves, it's like, how much do you need to have these cross? But I do think Mark is right. I wouldn't recommend this book, regardless of how much I liked it, to anyone just starting off in canon, because absolutely lost.
Yeah.
I mean, Shriv and Zay would not make sense to most characters. I mean, you kind of get a little bit of my mom and father dying out of the Resistance. Like, that doesn't mean anything to them unless you've actually seen it. I mean, even I'm aware, but I haven't seen all of Rebels. I've kind of like basically gotten like the Cliff Notes versions of what happened in Rebels. So a lot of like that stuff about like Ryloth, for me, didn't have the same emotional impact as I know it. So I mean, that's definitely going to be a problem. So yeah, that's going to be something that each book's going to have to answer. maybe that's something we can kind of bring up as we do each of these. How much did you actually need to know? I mean, kind of had to. I mean, Aftermath you probably could have skipped, but like Bloodline, like if why saving Ransom was such a big deal. I had read Bloodline, so to me, um, but yeah, I mean, if that's going to be a for this book.
Yeah, I could see Bloodlines being more important than Aftermath. It just sets up Wedge. Yeah, for sure to understand, because that's a huge drive for why they're going after Ransom is that connection that Leia has. So I would say, yeah, I'd agree that Bloodlines was definitely more important.
I mean, after I said that, I was like, oh wait, but you know what? Aftermath sets up the Snap Nora.
No, it does.
I mean, I think you could probably get by without that. You know, I think
you can.
Enough of the job it's playing. Like, there's a tension, but yeah.
Well, it has that tension, but I think the most important part from that is the Wedge and my mom are married and are retired, and Aftermath does a good job of setting up them getting together and building some of that. But I think you can easily, with that sentence, Wedge married my mom and they're retired here. So that sort of thing.
Right,
so
it's between Snap and Nora.
The tension, yeah.
And why there's tension initially there.
I don't know much about the Snap Nora thing, and I thought they explained it really well. He was kind of a resistance orphan. She ran off to fly. He grew up with his aunts. They talked about that really quickly in the book. And maybe they hand waved it away. Maybe it would have been more meaningful had I read the other books. But I get it. Like, we saw it. We've seen enough of the other ones. We know that families get neglected in favor of the rebellion and the resistance. We understand that these people are fighting for their lives, and a resistance orphan is not the hardest thing to grasp or to explain away that way. And so it made a lot of sense. Snap followed in her footsteps, which is also interesting. So I was okay with it, having not read Aftermath.
All right, so I kind of teased it a little bit earlier. I had an idea of like to talk about what our favorite moments of. Reed, what was your favorite moment?
Oh gosh, I think I've mentioned some of them already. I love the moment of the escape from the junk planet and Stronghammer just holding that line. I loved the final struggle for Wincher when he died, and I loved that moment of him on the bridge. That might be one of the moments of when you see this repressed, beaten down person snap and justifying all those emotions in his mind for when he murders his superior officer, flipping him over the bridge, and that was definitely one of my moments. And then I'm a sucker for a good action scene, so I also enjoyed the escape from Corellia and turning those guns on the stormtroopers and just blowing away the street to save Wedge. So those are definitely some great elements there.
What about you, Blaine?
Yeah, I think my favorite is going to be basically from the moment Wincher beats the crap out of Yama until he flips Genial off the bridge. Like that whole segment right there was just so well done, so well written. And to see a character snap like that is one thing, but to have it just that well done and that believable in a book for a character we've never seen before and we're never going to see again was just huge. That was brilliant writing all the way around, and probably the highlight of the book for me for this character. I mean, there's a lot of other things that I liked at different spots, but that one takes the cake.
So my favorite moment was actually not an action scene. It was the scene where I forget who it was. One of the other Resistance pilots confronted Poe about his mutiny, and then they all kind of went into like, okay, well, this is our background and all the, Finn was like, I'm a stormtrooper. I used to work for the First Order, and all of that. And then there's in the favorite moment there is when Poe starts to struggle. Like, okay, well, we have a choice here now, and then Zay interjects with the choice to be better. I loved that moment because that's one of those times where callbacks really work, because it works in that moment. But if you've played Battlefront 2, you know that moment that's actually a callback to one of my favorite moments in all of Star Wars, at least in canon, where Luke tells Delamico, "You have a choice to be better. You don't have a choice just to choose the rebellion. You have a choice to be better." If you haven't seen that scene between Luke and Delamico in Battlefront 2, absolutely go watch that scene. To me, it's like the encapsulation of what a Jedi is. Ideally, absolutely great scene. So to call back to that scene and like make an impact here, like yeah, we've got a choice here. We've got a choice to be better. The past is in the past. We can be reborn and be better. To me, I absolutely loved it. I thought it really fit in with the themes of the book and kind of like set up the stage, and so everything after that was kind of like gravy and fun. You had all the great action sequences on that mentioned. But yeah, that was the moment that I really liked because it was like a good tie-in with canon, but you didn't have to see it in canon. Just the canon really enriched the understanding of that moment. All right, so now maybe we should. I think we've kind of mentioned a few. Do you have any dislikes in the book? I know one for me was I didn't really like the way I didn't like the way Finn was written in general in this book. He was just kind of I think Reed, you mentioned he was just kind of a side character. I'm like, this dude is one of the few times we've seen an Imperial just straight up defect. And Stormtrooper abandoned his post, abandoned his programming. I wanted to see a lot more of the processes in Finn's mind. But the thing I most disliked was the way Finn and Poe's relationship was handled. Like, I almost felt like she was trying to like imply there was a romance there, and I felt like I was reading something. I felt like I was almost reading a fanfic at times. Like, because I've always felt like Poe and Finn's relationship is like more paternal. You know, Poe is named Finn, kind of guiding him through this. I don't know. That relationship, the way the relationship was on this book, didn't work for me as opposed to on screen, which I love because it's like, you know, great friends and all that. I didn't like Finn in this book. I didn't like Poe and Finn in this book. I felt like that was the most. Just like, oh, I don't know where we're going here. Just.
I think I disagree. I didn't get that feeling from them. I thought it was very much a brotherly camaraderie sort of thing from the guy who rescued him. I felt like that worked. I don't like Finn in general as a character. I think he's just a Jar Jar-esque. So that's my feelings of Finn. But that aside, I felt that his character was true to what has been depicted in the book. So I appreciated that greatly. I didn't get that feeling. Yeah, I guess I'm just the opposite of everything you said. I felt like it worked very much and was very true to what we've seen with his slapsticky nature of a guy who's sort of experiencing the galaxy for the first time, taken at an early age to be attempted to brainwash as a First Order Stormtrooper, and he's like, this drink is delicious. This thing is delicious. Let me eat more crab legs. Like, I felt like all of that fit so much, and like, this guy saved my life. He's my buddy. Let's go. Look at me. He's James Bond, and I don't know, John Travolta in a big shiny suit. I don't know, whatever that was. But no, I thought that was okay.
Blaine, do you have any main complaints?
Not too much, no. Like, I don't have all this. I don't know callbacks from the book. I kind of thought some of the junk planet was just filler. It felt, but I don't know the characters as well. And well, I mean, I agree with you, Reed. The whole zipline escape over the mouth of the monster and everything, like that. I want to see that on screen so bad. Like, I I love that set piece, but that's kind of a callback to some of the other movie tropes we've seen, where we get just little pieces, really cool set piece, but it's just kind of shimmed in there.
Mm-hmm.
Sarlacc pit for one, like, yeah, it was cool. Yeah, it fit the story and where they were going with it. But okay, we had a Rancor and they fought the Rancor, but when you kill the Rancor, okay, now we go to the Sarlacc pit, just bigger mouth. Like, it's kind of shimmed in there. When you can see it on screen, they're great. They're great effects. It looks really cool. When you get it in the book, it just doesn't quite work the same. So that was probably the big criticism I had. And then I guess overall on the book, it felt more like it was written to be a movie. Like, this seems like it would be so easy to adapt to a screenplay and turn into a digital adaptation rather than what we got. So I like that may have been one of the harder points I had of getting into the book too, is it felt like it should have played out as a movie It felt like it needed a text crawl at the beginning and just everything going on, and it just, I don't know, it's just kind of an overall general feeling about the book rather than some of the other Star Wars I've read where you feel like you're digging into a story and a book and it works best in print media rather than if it were in video media. And this one seems like it would be so much better in video media.
Now, I've mentioned most of mine, the the Poe character itself, and then some of the seemingly quick rise of the First Order. That was kind of stuff that I looked at.
Okay. Well, I think we've kind of covered the book itself pretty thoroughly. If anyone is in chat and wants to add, they can. But I kind of wanted to end on where this leaves us as far as canon, especially looking towards the Rise of Skywalker. Whether you see this as kind of learning anything towards that movie. Anyway, I started this off saying I don't think we learned a whole lot, but I think one thing we did learn is like, okay, the Resistance is getting scattered out at the edge. We know they're all kind of trying to, do certain adventures, but from what we can tell, it seems like people are coming back together for whatever big final battle will end up. So, do we think they're going to get called back for something, some big event? Is that, you think we're going to actually see that play out? Is like, hey, this means we need to come back together and we can't be scattered, or what do you guys think this means for the movie?
So I don't know exactly what it'll be for the movie. I think the movie is going to have to resolve the Rey and Kylo relationship and where that leaves them and the Jedi or Force users in general, alongside with some sort of resolution with this First Order Republic Resistance force. Because I don't think you can get 3 more movies, just drop all these people and have 3 more movies that shows the rebellion again, that hits some pretty deep lying frustrations I have with the new trilogy in general. But what I hope happens, and that connecting in with this book, is we're seeing all of these leaders and people coming together, very much reminding me some ways of Rebels when Mon Mothma makes that plea, and then all the ships come in out of hyperspace of people trying to come together again. So have this is rebuilding some of the Resistance. I'm still not 100% sure of how strong the First Order is, and maybe this is just this show of force that is just stretched so thin. So if canon-wise, if we can get enough of a backbone of people to put up a fight to topple Kylo, maybe Hux, not necessarily Hux, but topple the backbone of the First Order, perhaps this Rise of Skywalker movie and this rebuilding of the Resistance novel helps to establish factions and puts us back into a world of warlords and sort of a fledgling Republic-esque government trying to carve out for its chunk of the galaxy, and then having some of these, an Imperial remnant, a First Order remnant, I don't know, but have some of these remnants kind of there, and puts us, I think that would leave us at a spot where the canon and the subject matter in general could be really open for Disney to go wherever they wanted to, for books to go wherever they wanted to. You could bring in the Yuuzhan Vong or something if you wanted to do, which I guess it's not the Yuuzhan Vong anymore. We got that whole Thrawn thing going. But to bring in some sort of extra galactic threat if you wanted to go that way. But impact on the canon, I think this book has done a lot to sort of open the doors for where other books and movies and TV shows can go, and I think that's very effective by doing so.
Yeah, overall canon effect, like I think Reed, you hit it on the head there. It's opened up a lot of characters that other media forms can go. As far as the movie canon goes, I think because what you said earlier, Mike, you can't have a book that's required to read before this. I think they cut this off right at the point where the text crawl is going to pick up, and the text crawl is going to hand wave away. The Resistance has been racing through the Outer Rim planets and amassing forces they can. They may even throw a nod back to this book and the events on Corellia and freeing this, or the events on Ryloth and bringing everybody in, because they've got Rykian back. Rykian's a big name if you paid attention. I mean, he orchestrated the battle at Hoth. Like, good character, good one to bring back. The other guy, Orikomo, or
But he can't
whoever,
be in the movie because I don't think the actor's still.
Peter Cushing was in a movie and he wasn't alive.
I know. It
I
makes me
mean,
mad. It makes me mad.
like, but you don't have to have the same actor for that.
Yeah.
You can use the name, like Raikian could just be on the blockade runner because they have one of those again, which I think is an awesome take.
Or they could just use the name like they did Syndulla in.
Yeah, but I mean, just implying that Raikian's behind this goes a long ways. I think they've built it where the text crawl is going. You've explained more of what's behind the text crawl that's going to come, and we're going to get kind of a recap of what the Resistance has done from the end of the Last Jedi to the beginning of the movie to set up this final battle. And I think we are looking at a final battle with the First Order. It's kind of building that way. That's the way this book points us. Is they're out of time, they're out of options, nowhere is safe. So the only option is victory at this point. And so I really do feel like we are headed towards the final battle here, and that's okay. Because the rumor running around is
I don't
Favreau
want to
and
hear
Filoni.
rumors. I don't want to hear rumors.
No, 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 no,
I don't
no,
want to hear rumors.
no canon rumors. Just the rumor is Favreau and Filoni are getting their own trilogy together.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Wide open. Like there is another trilogy coming.
This is the way.
And it's going to be those two, and that's it.
This is
That's
the way.
all I know so far, and I trust those two to do whatever. So I think they're going to try to wrap
I
up this
sort of feel
storyline
like
and get it somewhere
I
else.
feel like Filoni's destiny is to take over for Kathleen Kennedy. I don't know if he wants to do a producer, but I can sort of see him taking over as like creative. Like that's been kind of like my feeling, just like the way they promoted with my Mandalorian is like here's Jon Favreau who's really good, and here's Dave Filoni, the heir to George Lucas. And he was positioned for a while, and I was like, oh.
So I'm going to go off the wall here. Filoni is for Star Wars what Bruce Timm was for animated DC. And if you're not familiar with Bruce Timm, he was the guy behind the 90s Batman and Superman and all of their animated stuff and Crisis on Two Earths. Like, he's done all of their animated stuff and been the producer and made that canon go. And he is fantastic. I think Filoni's that guy, and I think, yeah, he should be Kathleen Kennedy. And you let Favreau just keep churning out storyline after storyline because he's been writing, I think, all of The Mandalorian, and he's a proven writer, and just let him write and let Filoni sit there and produce and help keep the continuity going.
Yeah, 90s Batman's my jam. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The animated series. Tangent. No.
All right, well, that's pretty much all I have. Anything else that we didn't touch?
No, I think that's it. I guess the only thing that we need to officially as a group is thank everyone listening. But we're going to do this every month. We're going to have a new book. We'll send out some information about picking the next book that we're going to read next month. And we want to do one book a month and have chats like this in a similar way. So I don't know if you guys have suggestions right now you want to throw out, but we'll definitely post some things later.
Yeah, I know Reed and I we talked about maybe doing Masters and Apprentice. I mean, we may just kind of wait and see after Friday and after the movie to see like, hey, what book do we really want to go back redo? That might shine a lot of light on that, and we may wait until a week because I mean, you know, the Christmas season's coming up, so we're not going to be doing this for a few weeks anyway. But I know Master and Apprentice is a pretty good one that just came out this year.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah, if y'all have suggestions, if you're watching this after the fact, or you know, like, hey, I really wanted to read this book, I think it would be great if we do it together. Let us know, because I mean, right now while we're growing small, your voice is important to us, and we don't mind going over the books that we've read already.
Yep, Mark is all about Master and Apprentice or Dooku.
Oh yeah, the Dooku book. Dooku book is also Dooku book is also really interesting, because it's originally an audio play, so you can do either one. I haven't read the book, but I listened to the audio. Blackfire, I actually really like that, and I'm going in January. So. All right, well, I guess we will close it down as far as the official video that we do on YouTube. But if you're in chat, we'll maybe hang out a little bit and talk Mandalorian or whatever else we want to talk about the movie. But thank you for joining us, and until we see you next time, may the force be with you.
Yep, may the force be with you, and check us out on Facebook and soon to be Twitter as well. The Sacred Texts. This is the way.
This is the way. I thought everyone